Captain David Ross dragged his tired feet across the metal floor of the space station. His uniform was dirty, torn in places, and smelled like smoke and sweat. 6 months of fighting on the distant planet below had changed him. The bright-eyed soldier who left Earth was gone. In his place stood a man who had seen too much death and destruction. The hallways of Station Alpha 7 buzzed with activity. Soldiers rushed past him, carrying supplies and weapons. Medical teams wheeled injured fighters toward the hospital wing. The war against the alien invaders called the Vorthons was getting worse every day. Humanity was losing ground, and everyone knew it. David stopped at a small window and looked down at the planet's surface. Red clouds swirled around the rocky landscape. Somewhere down there, his friends were buried. Thompson, who always made jokes during the scary moments. Rodriguez, who carried pictures of his 3 kids. Wilson, who could fix any broken machine. All gone now. David was the only one from his team who made it back alive. A young officer approached him nervously. "Captain Ross, Commander Blake wants to see you right away." David nodded without saying anything. He followed the officer through the winding corridors of the station. Other soldiers stopped their conversations when they saw him pass. Everyone knew about his last mission. Everyone knew what happened to his team. Commander Blake's office was small but neat. The older man sat behind a metal desk covered with papers and computer screens. His gray hair was cut short, military style, and his face showed the stress of commanding a losing war. "Sit down, David," Blake said, pointing to a chair. "How are you holding up?" David shrugged. "I'm alive, sir. That's more than I can say for the others." Blake leaned forward, his expression serious. "I know this has been hard on you. Losing your entire squad, it would break most people. But you're still here, still fighting. That takes strength." "Doesn't feel like strength," David replied quietly. "Feels like I failed them." "You didn't fail anyone," Blake said firmly. "You completed an impossible mission and brought back valuable information about Vorthan positions. Command is impressed." "With your work?" David didn't respond. He stared at his hands, remembering the explosion that killed his friends. The screaming. The way everything went quiet afterward. Blake cleared his throat. "That's actually why I called you here. We have a new situation developing. Our allies, the Zephyrians, have sent us something special. A cultural advisor to help boost morale among our officers." The Zephyrians were humanity's only allies in this war. They looked similar to humans, but with pale blue skin and large, bright eyes. Their technology was far ahead of Earth's, and without their help, the war would have been over months ago. "What kind of advisor?" David asked, not really caring about the answer. "Her name is Kira," Blake explained. "She's young, highly trained in understanding human psychology and behavior. The Zephyrians say she can help our officers deal with the stress of combat." "God knows we need all the help we can get." David frowned. "Why are you telling me this?" Blake hesitated for a moment. "Because she's been assigned specifically to work with you." "Me? I don't need a babysitter." "It's not like that," Blake said quickly. "Think of her as support. Someone to help you process what you've been through. The Zephyrians have studied human behavior for years. They know things about dealing with trauma that our doctors are still learning." David felt uncomfortable with the idea. He didn't want to talk about his feelings with some alien, no matter how well trained she was. "I'm fine on my own, sir." "That's an order, Captain," Blake said, his voice becoming stern. "You'll meet with her, and you'll give this a chance. We can't afford to lose any more good officers to battle stress." Before David could argue, the office door chimed. Blake pressed a button, and the door slid open. A figure stepped inside, and David's breath caught in his throat. Kira was unlike any alien he had ever seen. While other Zephyrians he had met seemed cold and distant, she radiated warmth. Her skin was a soft blue color, almost glowing in the office lights. Her eyes were large and kind, with flecks of silver that seemed to shimmer when she moved. She wore simple white clothing that looked more like civilian clothes than a military uniform. "Commander Blake?" she said, her voice melodic and gentle. "Thank you for allowing me to serve here." She turned to David, and when their eyes met, he felt something strange. A sense of calm washed over him, like taking a deep breath after holding it for too long. "You must be Captain Ross," she said, offering a small smile. "I am Kira. I want you to know that you can ask anything of me. I am here to help you in whatever way you need." David stood up slowly, still staring at her. There was something about the way she spoke, the way she looked at him, that made him feel understood. It was as if she could see right through him, past the tough soldier exterior to the broken man underneath. Nice to meet you," he managed to say. Kira's smile widened slightly. "The pleasure is mine, Captain. I have studied your service record. What you have accomplished is remarkable. Your bravery has saved many lives." David felt his cheeks grow warm. He wasn't used to compliments, especially not from someone who seemed to mean them so sincerely. Commander Blake cleared his throat. "Kira has been given quarters near your section, David. She'll be available whenever you need to talk. I expect you to take advantage of this opportunity." "Yes, sir," David replied, though he wasn't sure how he felt about having constant support available. Kira stepped closer to him. "Captain Ross, I know this arrangement might seem unusual, but please understand, my only goal is to help you heal from what you have experienced. There is no shame in needing help. Even the strongest warriors require rest and care." Her words hit him harder than he expected. For months he had been telling himself that he needed to be strong, that asking for help was weak. But the way Kira spoke made it sound natural, even necessary. "I should let you two get acquainted," Blake said, standing up from his desk. "Kira, if you need anything, my staff will help you. David, remember what we discussed." As they left the commander's office together, David felt nervous and confused. Walking beside Kira through the station corridors, he noticed how other soldiers stopped to stare. Some looked curious, others suspicious. Humans and aliens working together was still new, and not everyone was comfortable with it. "They are wondering about me," Kira observed quietly. "It is natural. Change is always difficult." "How did you know what I was thinking?" David asked. Kira glanced at him with those silver-flecked eyes. "Your expression told me. Humans are very expressive, even when they try not to be. It is one of the things I find most interesting about your species." They walked in silence for a while, heading toward the residential section of the station. David found himself stealing glances at his new companion. She moved with grace, her steps light and careful. There was something peaceful about being near her, something that made the constant tension in his shoulders ease just a little. "Captain Ross," Kira said as they reached his quarters. "I want you to know that I understand this situation is new for you. You do not have to trust me immediately. Trust must be earned. But I hope, in time, you will allow me to help you carry the burden you have been bearing alone." David looked into her eyes and saw something he hadn't expected to find in an alien. He saw genuine care, real concern for his well-being. For the first time in months, he felt like someone actually understood what he was going through. "Thank you," he said simply. I think I'd like that." As Kira smiled and walked toward her own quarters, David stood in his doorway watching her go. Something told him that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. For the first time since losing his team, he felt a small spark of hope flickering in his chest. Maybe healing was possible after all. 3 weeks had passed since Kira arrived at the station, and David was starting to notice strange things. Every morning when he woke up, he found his favorite coffee already prepared exactly how he liked it. Not too strong, not too weak, with just a hint of sweetness. When he asked the kitchen staff about it, they looked confused and said they hadn't made any special orders. During their daily meetings, Kira seemed to know exactly what to say to calm his racing thoughts. When nightmares jolted him awake at 3 in the morning, she would appear at his door within minutes, carrying warm tea and a gentle smile. She never asked how she knew he needed help. She just showed up. David found himself looking forward to their conversations more than he wanted to admit. Unlike the military doctors who asked endless questions about his feelings, Kira simply listened. She had a way of making him feel heard without making him feel weak. "How do you always know what I need?" David asked one afternoon as they sat in the station's observation deck. Through the large windows, they could see stars scattered across the darkness of space like tiny diamonds. Kira was quiet for a moment, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. "I pay attention," she said finally. "Humans show their needs in many ways, even when they try to hide them." "It's more than that," David pressed. "Yesterday I was thinking about my old team, feeling really down about it. I didn't say anything to anyone, but you brought me that photo album of Earth landscapes. How did you know that would help?" A strange expression crossed Kira's face. She looked almost guilty, like a child caught taking cookies before dinner. "David, there is something I need to tell you about my people, about why I am really here." David felt his stomach tighten. He had been waiting for this moment, sensing that there was more to Kira's assignment than simple cultural exchange. "What do you mean?" Kira stood up and walked to the window, pressing her hand against the cool glass. "My species has abilities that yours does not. We can sense emotions, feel what others are feeling. It is not something we control easily. It simply happens." "You can read my mind?" David asked, feeling a mix of shock and betrayal. "Not your thoughts," Kira said quickly, turning back to face him. "I cannot hear your words or see your memories, but I can feel your emotions. When you are sad, I feel sadness. When you are afraid, I feel fear. When you are in pain—" She paused, her voice becoming softer. "I feel that too." David stared at her, trying to process this information. All those times she had known exactly what he needed, she had been feeling his emotions directly. It explained everything. But it also made him feel exposed and vulnerable. "So this whole time, you've been inside my head?" he asked, his voice getting louder. "It is not like that," Kira said, taking a step toward him. "I cannot turn it off. From the moment I met you, I have been connected to your emotional state. Every nightmare you have, I experience. Every moment of grief I share with you." David felt angry and confused. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I was not supposed to," Kira admitted, looking down at her hands. "My assignment here is not what you were told. I was not sent as a cultural advisor. I was sent specifically for you, David. Your military leaders and my government made an agreement. They identified you as a valuable officer who was struggling with battle trauma. They asked my people to send someone who could help stabilize your mental state." The truth hit David like a punch to the stomach. "So you're like a therapy tool? Something they assigned to fix me?" "That is what they intended," Kira said quietly. "But it became something different for me." David stood up abruptly, pacing across the small room. "This is unbelievable. Everyone has been lying to me. You, Commander Blake, probably half the people on this station." "David, please listen to me," Kira said, following him. "Yes, I was assigned to help you, but the connection I feel with you, the care I have developed, that is real. It is not part of my mission. How can I believe anything you say?" David stopped pacing and faced her. "If you were ordered to make me feel better, how do I know any of this is genuine?" Kira's eyes filled with something that looked like tears, though David wasn't sure if Zephyrians could actually cry. "Because I was not supposed to share your pain the way I have. My training taught me to help humans without becoming emotionally involved. But with you, I cannot maintain that distance." She walked closer to him, her voice becoming more earnest. "Every night when you wake up screaming, I wake up too. When you remember your friends who died, I feel that loss as if they were my friends as well. This was not supposed to happen. I was supposed to remain detached, professional." David looked into her eyes and saw something that made his anger start to fade. He saw genuine pain there, real concern that went beyond any military assignment. "So what does this mean?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "It means I have been learning about something my people do not fully understand," Kira said. "Choice. In my society, we are born into roles and trained to fulfill them without question. I was trained to help humans, to serve your military needs. But spending time with you has shown me something different." "What's that?" "That there is a difference between doing something because you are told to do it and doing something because you choose to do it." Kira moved closer to him. "I was assigned to help you heal, David, but now I help you because I want to, because seeing you in pain causes me pain, and seeing you smile brings me joy." David felt his heart beating faster. This conversation was changing everything between them. "Kira, I don't know what to think about all this." "I understand your confusion," she said. "But I need you to know that my feelings for you, my desire to help you, have grown beyond my original programming. When I see you making progress, when I watch you laugh at something silly, when you share memories of your childhood on Earth, these moments bring me happiness that has nothing to do with completing my mission." David sat down heavily in his chair, running his hands through his hair. "This is a lot to take in." "I know," Kira said, sitting across from him. "And I know it changes things between us. You have every right to be angry with me for not telling you sooner." They sat in silence for several minutes, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, David looked up at her. "I'm not angry," he said. "I'm confused, and I feel a little betrayed by the people who set this up. But I'm not angry with you." "You are not?" "No, because even knowing all this, I can tell that you genuinely care about me. And honestly," David gave her a small smile, "you've helped me more in these 3 weeks than all the military doctors combined. Whatever your original orders were, what you've done for me has been real." Kira's face lit up with relief and something that looked like gratitude. "Thank you for understanding." "But I need to ask you something," David said. "If you can feel my emotions, if you're connected to me that way, do you have any choice in caring about me? Or is it just because you're forced to experience what I experience?" Kira considered this question carefully. "That is something I have been wondering about myself, but I think I have found the answer." "What is it?" "When you are happy, I feel that happiness. But I have started doing things that have nothing to do with your emotions. I have been learning about human art, reading your literature, studying your history. These things bring me joy that is separate from your feelings. I think I am becoming my own person, not just a reflection of yours." David nodded slowly. "So, what happens now?" "Now," Kira said, "we continue to help each other heal. But this time, we do it honestly. No more secrets between us." As they shook hands on this new agreement, David felt something shift inside him. For the first time since losing his team, he felt like he had a real partnership with someone who understood his pain not just intellectually, but actually felt it with him. It was strange and complicated, but it was also the most hope he had felt in months. The weeks following their honest conversation brought changes that David hadn't expected. Kira was different now, more relaxed and natural. She laughed more often, asked questions about things that had nothing to do with his mental health, and even started making small jokes. It was like watching someone come alive for the first time. One evening, David found her in the station's small library, surrounded by books about Earth's history. She was completely absorbed in reading about ancient civilizations, her eyes wide, with fascination. "Finding anything interesting?" David asked, sitting down beside her. Kira looked up with excitement. "Did you know that humans once built massive pyramids that still stand thousands of years later? And they did it without the advanced technology we have today. It's incredible." David smiled at her enthusiasm. "Yeah, humans have always been pretty stubborn about building impossible things. Why are you reading about all this?" "Because I want to understand," Kira said simply. "Not just human psychology or emotions, but your culture, your dreams. What makes your species so determined to survive against all odds? And what have you learned so far?" Kira set down her book and turned to face him fully. "That humans are much more complex than my people taught me. We were told that humans are driven by simple needs, safety, food, companionship. But reading these stories, I see that you are driven by something deeper. You create beauty even when there is no practical reason to do so. You explore dangerous places just to satisfy curiosity. You fight for ideas and principles, even when it costs you everything." David felt a warm feeling in his chest listening to her talk. "You make us sound pretty noble." "You are," Kira said seriously. "Take you, for example. You could have requested a transfer to a safer assignment after losing your team. Instead, you chose to stay and keep fighting, even though it means facing the same dangers that killed your friends." David shifted uncomfortably. "I don't think about it like that. I just do what needs to be done." "That is exactly what I mean," Kira said. "You don't see your own courage because it feels natural to you, but courage is not the absence of fear, David. It is doing what is right despite being afraid." Before David could respond, the station's alarm system began blaring. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and an automated voice announced, "All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. Incoming enemy vessels detected." David jumped, up immediately, his training taking over. "I have to go. The Vorthons are attacking." "I'm coming with you," Kira said, standing up as well. "No way," David said firmly. "You're not a soldier. Stay here where it's safe." But Kira was already following him toward the door. "David, I can help. My abilities might be useful in battle." "Your abilities?" David stopped and turned to her. "What do you mean?" "I can sense emotions from a distance," Kira explained quickly as they hurried through the corridors. "That includes fear, aggression, and intent to harm. I might be able to detect enemy positions that your sensors cannot find." David hesitated. The idea of bringing Kira into danger made him feel sick with worry. But if she could really help save lives— "Stay close to me," he said finally. "And if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments." They reached the command center just as Commander Blake was organizing the defense. The main screen showed dozens of enemy ships approaching the station, like angry wasps. "Captain Ross," Blake called out, "take Alpha Team to Section 7. We've got breach pods heading for the lower decks." "Sir," David said, "Kira has abilities that might help us detect enemy positions. Request permission to bring her along. Blake." Looked surprised, but nodded quickly. "Whatever helps us survive this fight. Move out." David led his team of 6 soldiers through the station's maintenance tunnels, heading toward the predicted breach point. Kira stayed right behind him, her face pale but determined. "How are you doing?" David whispered to her as they crawled through. "A narrow passage." "I can feel them," Kira whispered back, her voice tense. "The enemy soldiers, their emotions are very different from humans. Cold, focused, but also hungry for violence." "How many?" Kira closed her eyes for a moment, concentrating. 12 of them. They're splitting into 2 groups. One group is heading for the power core, the other for the communication center. David quickly relayed this information to his team. They were able to set up ambush positions before the Vorthans even reached their targets. The battle was quick, and decisive, with David's team taking down the enemy soldiers before they could cause any real damage. But during the fight, something unexpected happened. One of the Vorthons had been hiding behind a damaged wall panel, waiting to attack David from behind. David never saw him coming, but Kira did. Without thinking, Kira threw herself between David and the enemy soldier, crying out a warning. Vorthan's energy weapon hit the wall where David had been standing, leaving a smoking hole in the metal. David spun around and quickly eliminated the threat, but his heart was pounding with more than just battle adrenaline. Kira had risked her own life to save his. "Are you okay?" he asked, checking her for injuries. "I'm fine," Kira said, though she was shaking slightly. "I felt his intent to harm you before I saw him. I couldn't let him hurt you." David stared at her, amazed and terrified by what she had done. "You could have been killed." "So could you," Kira replied simply. "And that was not acceptable to me." After the battle was over and the station was secure, David and Kira found themselves alone in the observation deck again. The stars looked the same as always, peaceful and distant, as if the violence they had just experienced was nothing more than a bad dream. "Today changed something," David said quietly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you saved my life. But more than that, you made a choice to put yourself in danger for someone else. That's not something you were programmed to do, is it?" Kira shook her head. "No. My training never covered combat situations. What I did today, it came from something else entirely." "What?" Kira looked at him with those silver-flecked eyes, and David saw something there that took his breath away. It came from caring about you as an individual, not as an assignment. It came from the thought that a universe without David Ross in it would be a darker place. David felt his heart skip a beat. "Kira, I know this complicates things." She continued. "I know that my original purpose here makes everything confusing. But I need you to know that what I feel for you now has nothing to do with orders or programming. It is purely my choice." David reached out and took her hand. Her skin was warm and soft, and he could feel a slight tremor in her fingers. "I care about you too," he said. "More than I probably should. More than is smart considering our situation." "Why? Is it not smart?" David sighed. "Because you're an alien, I'm a human soldier, and we're in the middle of a war. Because your people sent you here for a specific purpose, and my people will expect me to maintain professional boundaries. Because this whole situation is complicated in ways that neither of us fully understands yet." Kira squeezed his hand gently. "But despite all of those complications, you still care about me." "Yeah," David said, smiling despite himself. "I do." "Then, maybe," Kira said, "we can figure out the complications together." As they sat there holding hands and looking out at the stars, David realized that something fundamental had shifted between them. They were no longer just a soldier and his assigned support person. They had become two individuals who had chosen to care about each other, regardless of the circumstances that brought them together. It was scary and uncertain, but it was also the most real thing David had felt in a very long time. And for the first time since losing his team, he felt like he had something worth fighting for beyond just duty and survival. He had someone who would risk everything to protect him, and someone he would do the same for in return. David was having the best dream he'd had in months when the urgent knocking woke him up. In his dream, he and Kira were walking through a peaceful garden on Earth, talking about books and laughing at silly jokes. The knocking pulled him back to the cold reality of the space station. "Captain Ross, urgent message from command," came a voice through his door. David stumbled out of bed and opened the door to find a young communications officer holding a data pad. The kid looked nervous, like he was delivering bad news. "What is it?" David asked, taking the pad. "Orders from Earth Command, sir. They want to see you in the briefing room in 1 hour. Something about the Zephyrian advisor." David's stomach dropped. He had been dreading this moment for weeks. Ever since the battle where Kira saved his life, rumors had been spreading around the station. People were talking about how close they had become, how much time they spent together, how she had risked herself for him. An hour later, David sat in the briefing room facing a holographic projection of Admiral Thompson from Earth Command. The old man's weathered face looked stern and disappointed. "Captain Ross," the Admiral began, "we need to discuss your relationship with the Zephyrian advisor designated as Kira." "Sir, I'm not sure what you mean," David replied, though he knew exactly what this was about. "Don't play games with me, son. We have reports that you and this alien have developed an inappropriate personal relationship. Is this true?" David felt his jaw tighten. "Define inappropriate, sir." "You know damn well what I mean," Admiral Thompson snapped. "She was sent there as a tool to help you recover from battle trauma. She was not sent there to become your girlfriend." "With respect, sir, Kira is not a tool. She's a person with her own thoughts and feelings." The Admiral's expression hardened. "She's an alien asset assigned to our military operation, and according to our agreement with the Zephyrian Council, she's being recalled." David felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "Recalled?" "That's right. The Zephyrians are sending a transport ship to pick her up in 3 days. She'll be reassigned to work with other officers who need psychological support." "You can't do that," David said, standing up from his chair. "I can and I will," Admiral Thompson replied coldly. "This is not a debate, Captain. The decision has been made." "What if she doesn't want to go?" The Admiral laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Want to go? Son, these aliens don't work like that. They follow orders from their government just like we follow orders from ours. Her personal wants don't enter into the equation." David felt anger building in his chest. "That's wrong, and you know it. What's wrong is a human officer getting emotionally attached to an alien tool," the Admiral shot back. "You've lost perspective, Ross. That thing was designed to manipulate your emotions to make you more effective in combat. The fact that you think you have genuine feelings for it shows how well the manipulation worked." "Don't call her it," David said, his voice getting louder. "And she hasn't manipulated me. If anything, she's helped me become a better person." "Really? Then why are you defying direct orders from your superior officer? Why are you more concerned about some alien's feelings than following military protocol?" David stared at the hologram, realizing that nothing he said would change the Admiral's mind. To the military leadership, Kira was just a piece of equipment. Her thoughts, her feelings, her own desires meant nothing to them. "I won't let you take her," David said quietly. "Excuse me? I said I won't let you take her. She's not property. She's not a tool. She's a person who deserves to make her own choices about her life." Admiral Thompson's face turned red with anger. "Captain Ross, you are dangerously close to insubordination. Stand down immediately." "No, sir. I respectfully refuse to comply with this order." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, staring at David through the holographic display. When he finally spoke, his voice was ice cold. "Very well. Captain David Ross, you are hereby charged with disobeying direct orders and harboring an alien asset without authorization. You will be confined to quarters pending a full court-martial. Security will escort you immediately." The hologram flickered off, leaving David alone in the briefing room. Within minutes, 2 military police officers arrived to escort him to his quarters. As they walked through the corridors, David saw other soldiers watching him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. But the worst part was seeing Kira waiting outside his quarters. Her face was pale, and her silver eyes were filled with tears. "David," she said as the MPs approached, "I felt your distress from across the station. What happened?" "They're taking you away," David said, his voice heavy with defeat. "In 3 days, a Zephyrian ship is coming to take you back and assign you to someone else." Kira's face went completely white. "No, I don't want to leave. I want to stay here with you." One of the MPs stepped forward. Ma'am, you need to step away from the prisoner. Prisoner? Kira looked confused and frightened. David is not a prisoner. He's done nothing wrong. He's refused direct orders, the MP explained. He's being confined until his trial. David reached out and took Kira's hand before the MPs could stop him. Listen to me. They think you're just a tool, something they can move around whenever they want. But I know you're more than that. You're a person with your own thoughts and feelings. I am, Kira said firmly, and I choose to stay with you. You can't just choose, the MP said impatiently. You have orders from your own government. Kira turned to face the military policeman, and David saw something in her expression that he'd never seen before. Determination. Defiance. Then I refuse. Those orders, she said clearly. Everyone in the corridor went silent. Even the MPs looked shocked. You can't refuse orders from your own people, one of them said. Watch me, Kira replied. I am not a tool or a weapon or a piece of equipment. I am an individual, and I have the right to make my own decisions about my life. David felt his heart swell with pride and love for this brave, amazing person who was willing to stand up to two entire governments for him. Ma'am, the MP said nervously, I think you need to talk to your superiors about this. I will, Kira said, but my answer will not change. I choose to stay with David. As the MPs escorted David to his quarters, he heard Kira calling after him. I will not let them separate us. I promise you that. Over the next 2 days, the situation on the station became tense and complicated. News of David's refusal to give up Kira spread quickly through the crew. Some people supported him, saying that everyone deserved the right to choose their own path. Others thought he was being foolish, risking his career for an alien. But the most surprising support came from an unexpected source. Dr. Patricia Wells, the station's head psychologist, requested a meeting with Admiral Thompson and the Zephyrian Council. David learned about this when Commander Blake visited his quarters on the 2nd day of his confinement. Blake, David said as his old friend sat down across from him. How bad is this going to get? Honestly? Pretty bad, Blake replied, but there might be hope. Dr. Wells has been reviewing your case files and Kira's performance reports. She's arguing that what happened between you two actually proves that the Zephyrian program is working too well. What do you mean? She says that Kira's emotional development and her ability to make independent choices shows that she's evolved beyond her original programming. Wells thinks that forcing her to return to a role she's outgrown would be psychologically harmful. David felt a spark of hope. Do you think it will work? Blake shrugged. I don't know. But I do know that your situation has started a bigger conversation about the rights of non-human individuals serving in our military. Some people are calling it the most important civil rights case of the century. I never wanted to start a civil rights case, David said. I just wanted to protect someone I care about. Sometimes that's how the biggest changes begin, Blake replied, with one person deciding to do what's right, even when it's difficult. That evening, as David sat alone in his quarters wondering what the future would hold, he heard a soft tapping on his window. He looked outside and saw Kira floating in a maintenance pod just outside the station. She pressed her hand against the glass, and David pressed his hand against the same spot from the inside. Even through the barrier, he could feel her determination and love. Tomorrow, she mouthed silently. Tomorrow we find out if love is stronger than fear. David nodded, knowing that whatever happened next, they would face it together. They had already chosen each other. Now they had to convince two entire civilizations that their choice mattered. The courtroom was packed with people David had never expected to see. Reporters from Earth's major news networks sat next to Zephyrian diplomats in their flowing robes. Human rights activists shared seating with military officers who looked uncomfortable about the whole situation. At the center of it all sat Judge Harrison, a stern woman known for making fair but tough decisions. David wore his dress uniform, the medals on his chest catching the light as he shifted nervously in his chair. Beside him sat his assigned lawyer, Captain Jennifer Martinez, who had volunteered to take his case even knowing it could hurt her own career. Across the room, Kira sat with the Zephyrian delegation. She looked small and vulnerable in her simple white clothing, surrounded by the tall, imposing figures of her people's government officials. But when she caught David's eye, she gave him a small, brave smile that made his heart race. Judge Harrison banged her gavel to call the room to order. This hearing will determine whether Captain David Ross is guilty of disobeying direct orders and illegally harboring an alien asset. We will also address the question of individual rights for non-human persons serving within human military operations. The prosecution went first. Colonel James Peterson, a by-the-book officer with 30 years of service, stood up to present the military's case. "Your Honor," he began, "this case is simple. Captain Ross received direct orders from his superior officer and chose to disobey them. In any military organization, such behavior cannot be tolerated. Discipline and following orders are the foundation of everything we do." Colonel Peterson went on to argue that Kira was military equipment, no different from a weapon or a vehicle. "The Zephyrian Council assigned this individual to our forces for a specific purpose. Captain Ross has no more right to keep her than he would to keep a tank or a fighter ship that was being reassigned." David felt sick listening to Kira being described like a piece of machinery. He glanced over at her and saw that she was sitting, very still, her face expressionless, but he could imagine how painful it must be to hear herself talked about that way. When Colonel Peterson finished, Captain Martinez stood up to present David's defense. "Your Honor," she said, "this case is about much more than military discipline. It's about recognizing the fundamental rights of intelligent beings, regardless of their species or origin." Martinez called Dr. Wells to the stand first. The psychologist explained how Kira had evolved beyond her original programming during her time with David. When Kira first arrived, Dr. Wells testified, she followed her instructions exactly. She responded to Captain Ross's emotional states and provided appropriate support. But over time, she began making independent decisions, expressing personal preferences, and acting on her own moral judgments. "Can you give us an example?" Martinez asked. "During the recent Vorthon attack, Kira chose to risk her own life to save Captain Ross. This action was not part of her programming or training. It was a personal choice based on her own feelings and values." The prosecution objected, arguing that Kira's actions were still just advanced programming, but Judge Harrison allowed Dr. Wells to continue. "Your Honor, consciousness and free will are difficult things to measure, even in humans. But Kira has demonstrated creativity, curiosity, and moral reasoning that go far beyond simple programming. She has become an individual person." Next, Martinez called David to testify. As he walked to the witness stand, David felt the weight of everyone's attention on him. This was his chance to explain why he had risked everything for Kira. "Captain Ross," Martinez began, "can you describe your relationship with Kira?" David took a deep breath. "At first, I thought she was just doing her job. But as time went on, I realized that she was becoming her own person. She started asking questions about things that had nothing to do with helping me. She developed interests in human history and culture. She began making choices based on what she wanted, not just what she was told to do." "And how did this change affect you?" "It made me realize that she deserved the same rights and freedoms that any person should have. The right to choose where to live, who to spend time with, and what to do with her life." Colonel Peterson cross-examined David aggressively, trying to make him admit that his feelings for Kira had clouded his judgment. But David remained calm and confident in his answers. "Colonel," David said at one point, "if you met someone who could think, feel, dream, and make moral choices, would it matter what planet they came from? Would it matter what they looked like? Kira is a person, and people deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Martinez called Kira to testify on her own behalf. As Kira walked to the witness stand, the courtroom fell completely silent. She moved with quiet grace, her chin held high despite the enormous pressure she must have been feeling. "State your name for the record," Judge Harrison said gently. "I am called Kira by my people and—" "By the humans I have worked with," she replied, her voice clear and steady. Martinez approached her carefully. "Kira, can you tell us why you don't want to return to your previous assignment?" Kira was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "For my entire life, I was told that my purpose was to serve others. I was trained to put the needs of others before my own, to find satisfaction only in making others happy. I never questioned this because I knew no other way of life. What changed?" "Meeting David changed everything," Kira said, looking directly at him. "He treated me not as a tool or a servant, but as a friend. He asked about my thoughts and opinions. He encouraged me to learn about things simply because they interested me, not because they were useful to my work." "And what did you discover? About yourself?" Kira's eyes lit up with something that looked like wonder. "I discovered that I have preferences. I enjoy reading about ancient human civilizations. I find mathematics beautiful. I like the taste of earth chocolate and the sound of human music. These things bring me joy that has nothing to do with serving others." The Zephyrian delegation looked uncomfortable as Kira continued. "I also discovered that I have the capacity to love. Not the programmed care I was trained to provide, but genuine affection that comes from choice. I love David because of who he is, because of his kindness and courage, and the way he sees the good in others. This love is mine, not something that was put into me by my creators." Colonel Peterson tried to shake her testimony during cross-examination, but Kira answered every question with quiet dignity and clear reasoning. "Miss Kira," the colonel said, "how do we know that these feelings you describe aren't just more advanced? Programming?" "Because," Kira replied simply, "if I were still following my programming, I would obey my government's orders without question. The fact that I am here, refusing to return to my previous role, proves that I am acting on my own will." After all the testimony was completed, Judge Harrison called for a recess to consider her decision. David and Kira were allowed to speak briefly in a private room. "Whatever happens," David said, taking her hands in his, "I want you to know that these have been the best months of my life." "Mine too," Kira replied. "David, even if they force me to leave, they cannot take away what we have shared. They cannot erase the person I have become because of you. And they can't erase what you've meant to me," David said. "You saved me, Kira, not just from the Vorthans, but from myself. You showed me how to hope again." When court reconvened an hour later, Judge Harrison looked serious as she prepared to announce her decision. "This case has forced us to confront difficult questions about consciousness, free will, and individual rights," she began. "After careful consideration of all the evidence presented, I have reached my conclusion." The courtroom was so quiet that David could hear his own heartbeat. "I find that the individual known as Kira has demonstrated sufficient evidence of independent thought, moral reasoning, and personal autonomy to be considered a person under human law. As such, she has the right to make her own decisions about her future, including where to live and with whom to associate." David felt a wave of relief wash over him, but Judge Harrison wasn't finished. However, Captain Ross did disobey direct orders from his superior officer. "While I understand and sympathize with his motivations, military discipline must be maintained." David's heart sank. He had won Kira's freedom but lost his own career. "Therefore," Judge Harrison continued, "I sentence Captain Ross to be discharged from military service, but with an honorable discharge in recognition of his distinguished service record and the unique circumstances of this case." The courtroom erupted in cheers and protests. Some people celebrated the victory for individual rights, while others worried about the precedent it set for military discipline. David barely heard any of it. All he could focus on was Kira rushing toward him, tears of joy streaming down her face. "We're free," she whispered as she hugged him tightly. "We're both free." 6 months later, David and Kira lived in a small house on the colony world of New Haven. David worked as a civilian contractor, helping to train colonial defense forces. Kira had started a support group for other Zephyrians who wanted to break free from their traditional roles.